The calm before the storm. The universe was vast, stretching beyond what any single species could ever hope to understand. It was a place of power, where the strongest and most advanced civilizations ruled with unchallenged authority. In the heart of it all, a peace had been established, one that seemed unbreakable. But like most peace in history, it was fragile, and the calm before the storm was always the most dangerous time. Across the galaxy, powerful species ruled with ease. The Aleskans, a race of towering beings with shimmering exoskeletons, controlled vast fleets of warships, while the Pharans, a highly intelligent species, manipulated the stars themselves, bending them to their will. And then there was the Xanthi Collective, a species whose technology was decades ahead of anything else, their weapons capable of obliterating entire worlds with a single thought. To them, the idea of humanity, a young primitive species from a small forgotten planet, was laughable. Earth, the home of humanity, was little more than a speck on the galactic map. It was a place where humans fought amongst themselves, where survival was often a struggle. The galaxy had long since decided that humans were no threat to the greater cosmos. They were weak, they were divided, and above all, they were unimportant. But as the stars twinkled across the endless sky, something began to change. No one could quite pinpoint when it happened or how, but humanity had begun to rise. Quietly, stealthily, while the rest of the universe thought they were just another species to be ignored, humanity had been watching, learning, and waiting. They were preparing for something bigger than anyone could have anticipated. On Earth, the governments and world leaders had begun to notice strange patterns in space. Satellites, once focused solely on Earth's needs, had started picking up signals from the deep corners of the universe, signals that didn't belong to any known species. But instead of investigating, the leaders dismissed it, thinking it was just interference or natural space phenomena. After all, how could humans possibly compete with civilizations that could obliterate entire fleets with ease? Yet there were those among humanity who did not dismiss these signs. They were scientists, thinkers, and strategists who had a different view of the universe. They believed that humanity had always been underestimated, and that this could be the very thing that would make them dangerous. They began working in secret, developing technology not for defense, but for offense. Human ingenuity was their greatest weapon, and they had begun to sharpen it. At first, humanity's advances were subtle. New energy sources, breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, and the creation of powerful new alloys, things that could one day give them an edge. But no one knew that behind closed doors, humanity had been working on something far more advanced. A fleet of ships capable of faster-than-light travel, weapons that could cut through the toughest alien armor, and technology that was not just for defense, but for war. As the months passed, the universe's peace remained unshaken. The Aleskans were still the most powerful, their fleets dominating the trade routes. The Pharans continued to manipulate the stars with ease, and the Xanthi Collective grew ever more confident in their advanced technology. None of them suspected the storm that was silently brewing on the horizon. In the heart of one of humanity's most secretive military bases, a small group of top scientists and military leaders huddled around a table. They were watching the screens, monitoring the signals coming from deep space. They knew something was out there, something big. And soon, the universe would find out that humanity wasn't as insignificant as everyone thought. The calm before the storm was almost over. "We need to act," General Marcus Wilder said, his voice low and steady. He was a man who had spent his life in the military, and he could sense the change in the air. The Aleskans, the Pharans, the Xanth, they don't know what they're up against. But they will, and when they do, we'll be ready. The scientists at the table exchanged worried glances, but they all knew the truth. It was no longer a matter of if humanity would be noticed by the galaxy, but when. They had to prepare, and they had to prepare fast. The aliens were already too powerful, and any delay could cost humanity everything. "We've built something they can't ignore," Dr. Elena Chris, the lead scientist, said, her voice tinged with excitement. Our ships, our technology, they'll change everything. We're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're going to show them what humanity is really capable of. There was a moment of silence. The weight of what they were about to do settled in. Humanity was on the brink of something unimaginable, and they had no choice but to see it through. In the quiet halls of Earth's military command, the plans were set into motion. Soon, the universe would realize just how wrong it had been about humanity. The calm before the storm had lasted long enough. The storm was coming, and when it hit, the galaxy would never be the same again. The first strike. The first strike came when the galaxy least expected it. The universe had always thought of humanity as weak, primitive beings with outdated technology, unworthy of being taken seriously. But the truth was far different. Humanity had been biding its time, watching, learning, and preparing for the moment when they would prove just how dangerous they could be. The aliens had no idea what was coming. Most species in the galaxy had no reason to fear Earth. To them, it was a small, insignificant planet, home to a species that couldn't even understand the true power of the stars. But humanity had one weapon no one else had ever counted on: sheer determination. They fought with a fierce spirit that no alien had ever witnessed. It all began when the first human fleet, hidden in the depths of space, emerged from the shadows. Their ships were nothing like the sleek, powerful crafts of the alien races. At first glance, they seemed outdated, almost laughable. They were smaller, less advanced, but they were fast. Too fast. And they were piloted by soldiers and civilians alike who had trained their entire lives for this very moment. They had learned everything about their enemies, every weakness, every tactic, and every flaw. They were ready. General Marcus Wilder stood aboard the flagship, the Valkyrie, watching the view screens as the fleet approached the Alaskan-controlled star system. His mind raced as he prepared for the attack. His eyes flicked over the massive fleets of the Alaskans, imposing warships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. But today, it would be different. Today, humanity would show them what it meant to face true fury. "We have only one chance," Wilder said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "We strike fast, and we strike hard. No hesitation." His orders were simple: hit the Alaskan armada with everything they had, focusing on their weak points. The Alaskans had been so sure of their power, so confident in their superiority, that they never considered the possibility that anyone could actually outthink them. They believed their weapons were unbeatable. Their fleets were unbeatable. They were wrong. The human ships, outnumbered by the Alaskans 5-1, charged forward, launching wave after wave of powerful missiles and plasma charges. The Alaskans didn't even realize they were under attack until the first wave of missiles slammed into their lidships. They were completely caught off guard. The humans had anticipated every move the Alaskans would make, and they used their smaller ships' agility to avoid direct combat, making every strike count. As the Alaskans scrambled to form a defensive line, the human fleet executed perfect tactical maneuvers. The alien ships, with all their advanced technology, struggled to match the precision and speed of the human forces. It was as if the humans knew their every move before they made it. It was chaos. Alien warships exploded in fiery bursts of light as the humans attacked relentlessly, showing no mercy. "What the hell is happening?" shouted General Harkin, commander of the Alaskan fleet. He watched as his forces were torn apart. His once mighty ships were being shredded by the relentless onslaught of humanity's fleet. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The humans didn't stop. They pushed forward, pressing their advantage. They didn't wait for the aliens to regroup or counterattack. Every moment was a chance to destroy another enemy. And they took it. But it wasn't just the power of the ships that made the difference. It was the human strategy. Their ability to outthink their opponents was something no one had expected. They understood the importance of morale. They knew that to defeat the Alaskans, they had to break their spirits as much as their ships. So, in the midst of the chaos, they broadcasted a message across the Alaskan fleet. A simple message, spoken in the universal tongue of the galaxy. You are not invincible. The message echoed across the communication systems of every Alaskan ship, like a blow to the heart. The once proud Alaskans began to falter, their minds filled with doubt, and their resolve began to crack. Humanity wasn't supposed to be able to do this. It wasn't possible. Yet, here they were, tearing through the Alaskan forces with ruthless efficiency. With one final strike, the human fleet overwhelmed the last of the Alaskan warships. The galaxy had never seen a victory like this, one so sudden, so unexpected. The Alaskans, once thought to be the greatest power in the universe, had been crushed in mere hours. General Wilder stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, his face grim. His fleet had won, but the cost had been high. Hundreds of human lives had been lost in the assault. The enemy was powerful, but humanity had proven that they could stand up to it. He turned to his crew. "We've sent a message today," he said. "We've shown the galaxy that we are not to be ignored. This is only the beginning." But as the human fleet prepared to retreat to a secure location, they had no idea that their victory had already begun to ripple throughout the galaxy. News of the Alaskan defeat spread like wildfire. The galaxy's other powers, species that had once thought humanity was too weak to even consider, began to take notice. And as they did, a wave of fear began to spread. Humanity had only just begun to make its mark on the galaxy, and if the Alaskans had underestimated them, the rest of the universe would soon learn that humanity was not a species to be dismissed. The storm was only starting. The ripple effect. The victory over the Alaskans was not just a win for humanity. It was a catalyst that set off a chain reaction across the galaxy. Within hours of the stunning defeat, reports of the battle reached every corner of the universe. Every species, from the most powerful to the weakest, heard the same shocking news. Humanity had not only fought back, but they had won. The reaction was immediate. The galaxy, which had long considered humanity to be insignificant, was now scrambling to process the reality that Earth's inhabitants had the power to take on the most formidable forces in existence. But with this new fear came confusion. How could a species that had been fighting for survival on a small, isolated planet for centuries suddenly become a threat? What was it about humanity that the rest of the universe had failed to see? On the Farron homeworld, the ruling council was in an uproar. The Farrons, known for their vast intelligence and control over the stars, had always prided themselves on their ability to calculate the future. But this was something no amount of data could have predicted. Humanity's sudden emergence as a galactic power shook them to their core. They were not prepared for a species with such cunning, such adaptability. The humans must be eliminated, one council member suggested, his voice dripping with both fear and pride. We must act quickly before they gain more power. But we cannot underestimate them. Not after what happened with the Alaskans, another member replied. We thought they were weak. They are not. Across the universe, the reaction was the same. The Xanthi Collective, an empire known for its advanced technology, began to reevaluate its position. They had once dismissed humanity as a threat, but now they knew better. The humans had proven themselves to be unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. The Xanthi Collective had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, but even they could not calculate how humanity would respond. It was a wild card, and in a universe of power, wild cards were to be feared. While the galaxy was caught up in its shock and confusion, humanity was already planning its next move. General Marcus Wilder, though victorious, knew that their work had just begun. The Alaskans had been only the first target. Humanity couldn't afford to stop there. Their reputation was on the line. If they were going to survive, they would need to strike quickly and decisively before their enemies could regroup. The human fleet, now bolstered with new technologies and battle-tested warriors, turned its attention to the Farrons. The Xanthi Collective was still too far away to engage directly, but the Farrons, They were just close enough to make an example of. General Wilder stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, watching as his fleet moved silently toward the Farron border. His face was grim, his eyes reflecting the burden of the decisions he had made. The galaxy would never forget what had happened to the Aleskans, but it would be humanity's next move that would define their place in the cosmos. "We cannot let them think we are weak," Welder said, his voice filled with determination. "We've already shown them we can win. Now we need to make sure they know we're not going anywhere." The operation was set into motion without delay. Humanity's strategy was simple yet effective. Take the Farrons by surprise. Just like the Aleskans, the Farrons were confident in their technological superiority, but they had underestimated humanity's ability to think on their feet. As the human fleet entered Farron space, they encountered little resistance. The Farrons had been watching the aftermath of the Aleskan defeat with great concern, but they hadn't expected an attack so soon. They thought they had time to regroup, to plan. They were wrong. Humanity's ships, designed for speed and precision, tore through Farron defenses like a knife through butter. Their weapons, though not as advanced as the Xanthi or Farron technology, were crafted with an ingenuity that made them nearly impossible to counter. Every shot was calculated, and every strike hit with deadly accuracy. The Farrons were caught off guard, and within hours, a large portion of their fleet was destroyed. Back on Earth, the news was received with mixed emotions. The people were ecstatic. This was another victory in humanity's rise to power. But General Wilder and his commanders knew better. The Farrons were just the beginning. The true challenge would come when they faced the Xanthi Collective or other, even more advanced species. Still, the ripple effect continued. The news of the Farron defeat spread across the galaxy, and the message was clear. Humanity was not to be ignored. The Aleskans had learned the hard way, and now the Farrons had learned it too. The universe could no longer dismiss humanity as a minor species. The storm was gaining strength, and the winds of change were beginning to blow across the stars. In the far reaches of space, hidden in the dark corners of the galaxy, a figure stood in the shadows, watching the chaos unfold. This figure had been tracking humanity's rise from the beginning. They had seen the human fleet crush the Aleskans, and now the Farrons were falling. The figure's eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity. Humanity was becoming a threat to be reckoned with, and this figure had its own plans for how to deal with them. The gathering storm. The Farron defeat had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but the most unsettling realization was that humanity's rise had only just begun. The universe had watched with confusion and fear as the human fleet tore through their opponents. And now, the larger empires, those who had ruled the stars for eons, were beginning to take notice. In the Xanth Collective's high command, a meeting had been convened. The Xanthi were not a species to panic, but even they couldn't ignore the implications of humanity's victories. Their fleets had been built with immense care and years of technological superiority, but none of their calculations had predicted humanity's remarkable resilience. The Xanthi had always relied on their overwhelming power to subdue lesser species, but now they found themselves facing a species that didn't know when to give up. "We must prepare," declared High Commander Oryx, his voice calm but heavy with concern. The Farrons were weak. Confident, yes, but weak. "We cannot afford to make the same mistake." His council nodded in agreement, but the weight of the situation hung over them. The Xanthi were a species of reason, but their pride was their downfall. For centuries, they had regarded humans as nothing more than a curiosity. But now that same curiosity was growing into something they could no longer dismiss. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Marcus Wilder stood on the balcony of a command station overlooking a sprawling military complex. His mind was heavy with the burden of the decisions to come. Humanity's victories had been hard-earned, but every success carried new risks. The Aleskans, the Farrons, these were just the first pieces of a larger puzzle. Wilder knew that the next challenge would be different. The Xanthi Collective would not be so easily caught off guard. We can't just keep reacting. Wilder muttered to himself. We need to be the ones making the moves. But the challenge was not just about warfare. It was about understanding the universe and how it would now view humanity. There were enemies, yes, but there were also allies, or at least potential ones. Humanity could no longer afford to fight this war alone. The alliances of the galaxy were fractured, and the balance of power was shifting. Now, humanity had to decide who they would trust and who they would fight. Aboard the Valkyrie, the flagship of the human fleet, Commander Ava Reinhardt studied the latest reports. The situation was grim. While humanity had taken down the Aleskans and Ferens, both fleets had been only the beginning. The Xanthi were next, but they wouldn't be as easy to defeat. They had been watching humanity, studying their methods, and now they were preparing for what they knew would be an inevitable confrontation. We can't afford another surprise, Commander Reinhardt said, her voice low but steady. We need to prepare for everything they have. Every weapon, every tactic. At the same time, a secret meeting was taking place within the halls of the Galactic Assembly, an organization designed to maintain peace among the galaxy's greatest empires. Representatives from every corner of the universe had gathered in secret, their faces a mixture of concern and uncertainty. The leader of the assembly, the Zorthian representative, stood before the group. We've seen what humanity is capable of. The Ferens and Aleskans thought they could control them, but the humans have proven otherwise. What will we do about it? The other representatives were silent. Some were frightened. Others were calculating their next move. The Zorthians, with their massive fleets and indomitable wills, had no intention of allowing humanity to rise unchecked. Their kind had been at the top of the galactic hierarchy for millennia, and the very idea of another species shaking that foundation was intolerable. We have two choices, the Zorthian continued. We either unite against them, or we let them continue to grow. But we cannot afford to wait too long. They are already stronger than we realize. The debate continued, with little resolution. Some wanted to negotiate with humanity, to offer them alliances and resources in exchange for peace. Others were not so trusting. Fear, it seemed, was the dominant force now shaping the galaxy's actions. Back on Earth, the human leadership had a different perspective. Humanity's own spies had reported back from alien systems, providing invaluable intelligence. The Xanthi had begun to mobilize. Their fleets were preparing for a strike, and their advanced technology was already beginning to shift the balance once more. But humanity had learned valuable lessons in their battles. They were not the same species that had been dismissed by the galactic powers just a few months ago. Wilder and Reinhardt gathered in a briefing room, their faces determined. We have to outthink them, Wilder said, his voice filled with resolve. They are stronger, but we are smarter. We can take them down. Commander Reinhardt nodded. We'll need every ally we can get. There are species out there who are just as afraid of the Xanth as we are. It's time to find them and make our move. The storm was gathering, and the stakes were higher than ever. Humanity had already proven that they could face down the strongest enemies the galaxy had to offer, but now they would need to play a different game. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about securing the future of their people in a galaxy that had begun to view them as a serious threat. The Xanthi were preparing for war, but they had underestimated humanity's greatest weapon, their ability to unite and fight for survival. Humanity had faced extinction time and time again, but they had always come back stronger. And now, with the entire galaxy watching, they were about to show the universe just how dangerous a united human race could be. The turning tide. The universe had been rocked by humanity's unexpected rise to power, but the true test was about to begin. The Ferens, the Xanthi Collective, and even the once complacent Galactic Assembly now viewed Earth's inhabitants with a mixture of awe and fear. No longer could humanity be brushed aside as a minor force. The galaxy had no choice but to acknowledge the threat they posed, and it was with this realization that the universe began to change. On Earth, General Marcus Wilder knew the time to prepare was running out. The Xanthi were not going to wait much longer before they acted. They had the technological advantage and the sheer might of their vast empire. They had watched humanity's rise closely, studied the humans' tactics and the way they fought. If they were going to win, humanity had to make the first move. Wilder turned to his most trusted officers, Commander Ava Reinhardt included. "We've trained for this moment, but now we need to make our move. We've learned from the Aleskans and the Farans. The Xanthi think they can outsmart us, but we're not going to let that happen." Commander Reinhardt nodded. "We have allies, General. We just need to find them and convince them to join us." Humanity's allies were scattered across the galaxy, some hidden in the shadows, others simply waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. With each victory over the Aleskans and Farans, humanity had earned the trust of various species who had once been reluctant to fight. But trust was fragile, and convincing these species to unite against a force like the Xanthi would require more than just military prowess. It would require diplomacy, strategy, and an unyielding determination to stand together. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, factions began to move. The Naor, a race of engineers who had once been subjugated by the Xanthi, saw this as their moment for revenge. The Kreza, known for their speed and stealth, had always been neutral, but they could no longer afford to stay on the sidelines. Even the enigmatic Vernix, a species that communicated through thought alone, had begun to take an interest in the human cause. Their interest was not one of goodwill, but of survival. The Vernix understood better than most that the Xanthi were not just an enemy to humanity. They were a threat to every living being in the galaxy. But as these factions gathered, the Xanthi were already making their moves. Their fleets were assembling in the farthest reaches of space, their plans of attack drawn up with precision and care. They knew humanity was coming for them, and they were ready. The Xanthi had long relied on their overwhelming technology to crush their enemies, but the humans had proven time and again that they couldn't be defeated by brute force alone. The Xanthi were now facing a force they didn't understand, a force that had begun to unite the galaxy against them. On the Valkyrie, General Wilder was briefed on the latest intelligence from the front lines. "The Xanthi are preparing to strike first," he said, his voice heavy with determination. "They'll be coming for Earth, but they won't expect what's coming. We have to make them see that we're ready." Commander Reinhardt placed a hand on the holographic map. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the entire galaxy. If we fall, so does everyone else." Wilder's gaze hardened. "Then we won't fall." And with that, the plan was set into motion. The human fleet, now bolstered with the support of their new allies, was ready to engage the Xanth. They weren't just heading to war. They were heading into the heart of Xanth space itself. The battle would be unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The Valkyrie led the charge, flanked by ships from the Naor and Kreza, their combined fleets forming a barrier of unprecedented unity. As they neared the Xanth frontier, the galaxy held its breath. Would humanity be able to overcome the might of the Xanth, or would they be crushed under the weight of an empire that had ruled for millennia? In the dark silence of space, the battle began. The Xanthi fleet was vast, its ships massive and imposing, but humanity's strategy was simple: hit fast, hit hard, and never give the enemy a chance to regroup. The human ships, designed for precision and maneuverability, darted in and out of the Xanth lines, striking with calculated force. The Naor engineers had augmented the human fleet with new experimental weapons, energy shields that could withstand even the most powerful Xanth blasts, and weapons that could disable Xanthi ships with pinpoint accuracy. The Xanthi were caught off guard. Their once overwhelming firepower faltered as humanity's precision tactics tore through their defenses. The Kreza ships, nimble and fast, flitted between the Xanthi vessels, confusing them at every turn. For the first time in centuries, the Xanthi were losing ground. General Wilder's voice echoed through the comms. "Push them back. Don't give them an inch." Humanity's forces pushed forward, relentless in their assault. And in the chaos of battle, something remarkable happened. The Vernix, who had remained silent for so long, made their move. With a flash of mental energy, they disrupted the Xanthi fleet's communication network, throwing the enemy into disarray. The Xanthi, once so sure of their dominance, now found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts, their systems scrambled and confused. The tide of the battle had turned. As the Xanthi fleet began to retreat, General Wilder stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the unfolding victory. The galaxy had seen its first glimpse of humanity's true power, and it was far more than anyone had ever expected. But this was only the beginning. The Xanthi might have been defeated, but their influence still stretched far and wide. And now, with the galaxy watching, humanity had to prove that they could protect what they had earned and continue to fight for their place among the stars. The weight of victory. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter in the aftermath of the battle. Humanity, alongside their new allies, had delivered a stunning blow to the Xanthi collective. The victory was not just a triumph of military might. It was the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. The Xanthi, once considered an invincible empire, had been pushed back, and the galaxy was left reeling from the shocking display of humanity's strength. But victory came with a heavy cost. General Marcus Wilder stood at the command center of the Valkyrie, staring out into the vastness of space. His face was drawn, the weight of the battle weighing on his shoulders. The humans had fought bravely, but the cost in lives was steep. The Farans, the Aleskans, and even the Kreza had suffered losses in the fight. The galaxy had witnessed the ferocity of humanity's warriors, but it was clear that this war was far from over. "We've won this round, but the Xanthi aren't finished," Wilder muttered to himself. "They'll be back, and next time, they'll be better prepared." Commander Ava Reinhardt stepped up beside him, her face hard and determined. "We can't stop now, General. We have to press our advantage while we still can. We've shown them we're not to be underestimated, but we need to make sure they understand that this isn't just a battle for survival. It's a fight for the future of the galaxy." Wilder nodded, his mind already racing with plans. "Agreed. We need to solidify our alliances and keep the momentum going. The Vernix, the Naur, the Kreza, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about uniting the galaxy before the Xanthi can regroup and come back stronger." As the human fleet moved deeper into Xanthi-controlled space, they encountered little resistance. The Xanthi had suffered massive losses in the battle, and their forces were scattered. But their pride was wounded, and they weren't going to let humanity's victory go unchallenged. It was only a matter of time before the Xanthi regrouped and struck back with everything they had. In the aftermath of the battle, negotiations began. The galaxy's once distant species, those who had watched humanity's rise from the sidelines, now saw the humans as a force to be reckoned with. But not all of them were eager to ally with Earth. The Zorthians, who had been the galaxy's dominant force for millennia, were still hesitant. Their power was built on a foundation of fear, and the rise of humanity threatened that balance. The Galactic Assembly convened once again, this time with a much different tone. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy sat in uneasy silence as the Zorthian representative, Vraxis, addressed the room. "We cannot ignore humanity's actions any longer," Vraxis said, his deep voice echoing across the assembly hall. "Their strength has proven to be formidable, and we must decide whether they are an asset or a threat." The room was filled with murmurs of agreement and dissent. Some representatives spoke of peace and the possibility of alliances, while others argued that humanity had proven too dangerous to be left unchecked. But one thing was clear: the galaxy's power structure had shifted. Humanity's rise could no longer be ignored. Back on Earth, General Wilder and Commander Reinhardt were preparing for the next phase. The Xanthi were not a species that would simply retreat into the shadows. They were regrouping, rebuilding their forces, and humanity had to be ready for the next strike. "We've taken a major step forward," Wilder said, his voice low and resolute. "But the next phase of this war will determine everything. The Xanthi will not rest until they reclaim their dominance. We need to be ready." Reinhardt placed a hand on his shoulder. We will be ready. The galaxy may be divided, but humanity is stronger than ever. We've united species that were once enemies. We've shown them that we won't back down. We'll keep pushing until the Xanthi understand that their reign is over. The human fleet was already preparing for the next move. They had proven that they could face down the galaxy's most powerful forces, but now they had to prove they could hold their ground. The Xanthi had been humiliated, but they were far from defeated. And as humanity stood on the edge of something greater, the next phase of the war loomed large. The balance of power had shifted, but there was no time to rest. The future of the galaxy was still uncertain, and humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning. The final showdown. The calm that had settled over the galaxy after humanity's victory was short-lived. The Xanthi, wounded but far from broken, had licked their wounds and regrouped in secret. The fall of their mighty fleets had rattled them to their core, but their pride remained as fierce as ever. Now they were preparing for a final, all-out assault on Earth and its newfound allies. General Marcus Welder knew this was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. He stood in the command center of the Valkyrie, staring at the strategic holograms of the galaxy's most critical sectors. The human fleet was ready, their allies prepared for the final push. The time for diplomacy had passed. The time for war had arrived. We've already shown the galaxy what we can do, Wilder said, his voice steady. But we can't stop now. The Xanthi will not relent. They'll come at us with everything they have. And we have to be ready. Commander Ava Reinhardt stood beside him, eyes hard with resolve. It's not just Earth they're coming for anymore. They're coming for all of us. We need to finish this. Wilder nodded, his expression grim. We've gained allies from every corner of the galaxy, but we still don't know how deep the Xanthi's network runs. They've controlled vast swathes of space for centuries. We have to strike fast, hit hard, and never give them a chance to recover. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Ships of every size and shape, from the sleek Kreza fighters to the mighty Neor dreadnoughts, joined together in the final assault fleet. Every species that had once feared the Xanthi now stood together, unified under the banner of humanity. The universe had never seen such a coalition. General Wilder addressed the fleet one final time before they departed. This is it, everyone. We fought to survive. We fought for our future. And now we fight to take the galaxy back from the Xanthi. There is no turning back. We will win this battle, and we will make sure the galaxy knows we are not to be underestimated. The fleet surged toward the heart of Xanthi space, its engines roaring with the promise of destruction. The Xanthi, still recovering from their initial defeat, were caught off guard by the sudden assault. Their forces were scattered, not yet fully reorganized, and humanity's coalition capitalized on their moment of weakness. But the Xanthi were not without their own tricks. As the first wave of the human fleet breached their territory, a wave of powerful warships emerged from the depths of a nearby nebula. The Xanthi had been hiding their most advanced ships, and now they were unleashing them in a desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war. The battle was brutal. Laser fire lit up the dark void of space as the two forces clashed. The Valkyrie, with its unmatched maneuverability and firepower, cut through the Xanthi lines, taking down massive warships with surgical precision. The Neor's enhanced weaponry tore through enemy shields, while the Kreza fighters darted in and out of the fray, striking from unexpected angles. But the Xanthi were no easy prey. They fought with a cold, calculated ferocity, and their technology was still far superior in many respects. It quickly became clear that this battle would not be won with firepower alone. Humanity needed to outsmart them. We can't just rely on brute force, Commander Reinhardt said, watching the battle unfold on the command screen. We need to break their communication lines. If we can isolate their command fleet, we can force them into submission. General Wilder thought for a moment. Agreed. It's time to turn the tables. Have the Vernex start their disruption protocol. We'll coordinate with the Kreza and take down their flagship. The Vernix, whose telepathic abilities had already disrupted the Xanthi's communications once before, began their assault on the Xanthi fleet's internal systems. With a surge of psychic energy, they scrambled the enemy's tactics, throwing their once precise maneuvers into disarray. The Xanthi flagship, a gargantuan ship that had once been the symbol of their invincibility, now found itself blind to the battlefield. The human fleet, led by the Valkyrie, struck with precision. Guided by the Vernix's psychic disruption, they tore into the Xanthi's flagship, blasting through its defenses and crippling its engines. The tide of the battle shifted, and the Xanthi were now on the defensive. But even as the flagship fell, the Xanthi refused to surrender. They unleashed their last-ditch weapons, devastating energy pulses that shook the very fabric of space itself. The blasts were so powerful they threatened to rip apart the human fleet. But humanity had prepared for this. The Valkyrie deployed its final trump card, an experimental shield that absorbed and redirected the Xanthi's energy blasts. As the shield absorbed the energy pulses, General Wilder sought his opportunity. "Now," he shouted. The fleet closed in, launching their final strike. The Xanthi flagship exploded in a massive fireball, its once proud hull crumbling into space debris. The remaining Xanthi ships began to retreat, but they were no match for the united forces of humanity and their allies. One by one, they fell. With the final remnants of the Xanthi fleet defeated, the universe was left in stunned silence. Humanity had done it. They had defeated an empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. But it wasn't just a victory for Earth. It was a victory for every species that had united against the Xanthi. General Wilder stood at the command center once more, looking at the shattered remains of the Xanthi fleet on the screen. The war was over. Humanity had proven that they were not just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We've won," Wilder said, his voice soft but filled with pride. "But now we have to make sure it stays that way. We've earned our place in the galaxy." Commander Reinhardt nodded, her expression resolute. "And we'll defend it with everything we've got." The galaxy had been forever changed. The Xanthi were no longer the rulers of the stars. Humanity had taken their place, and they would never again be underestimated.